tap the mouse.
Yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. It's Gwen and Ode. And we're just waiting for Phyllis Curott to come and join us.
Yep. Pagan Standard Time. I'm sure she'll be here any minute.
Time, so we're just kind of chilling out, waiting for her to arrive.
So we wanted to start the stream. And hopefully you'll get notifications.
Yes, which is why I'm going to right now, as you're watching, going to say, hey, we're live on YouTube, on the Facebook.
On the Facebook. Let people know.
Because that's, a lot of people follow us there.
Yeah.
So. All right, so you talk while I do this.
Okay. What should I talk about?
Oh, well, why don't you talk about
Phyllis? All right, yeah. We'll do a little intro to Phyllis. She's got a...
there it is.
Yeah, she's got a bio here in the syllabus.
Yep.
So Phyllis Curott is a spiritual trailblazer and priestess, an attorney and best-selling author whose groundbreaking books have made Wicca accessible to the world and awakened an entire generation to the goddess. She is Vice Chair Emerita of the 2015 Parliament of the World's Religions and founder of the Temple of Ara. Visit Phyllis at www.phylliscurott.com. That's PhyllisCurott.com.
Okay, and yes, I'm taking pictures while we're on the I don't think to do this ahead of the time.
I'm accustomed to it. She takes photos at every conceivable opportunity. I'm conscious that it's happening, but I choose to ignore it because I know what she wants are candid shots, so I just keep doing whatever I'm doing because that's whatever she wanted to record in the first place. Carr has a different approach, which is to thwart candid shots as often as possible by stopping and pulling a stupid face.
It's true.
But because I am the child, the superior child, instead of the dad jokes, I just let her do whatever it is she's trying.
This is wise. Any child out there is wise. Just let your mom do whatever. Just go along.
Just play along.
It
makes them happier in the long run.
Yep.
And then you have, less angst in the house.
That's right.
Which is preferable in every conceivable way.
Of course. Well, do you want to join us until Phyllis gets here?
I'm going to go see what Phyllis is.
Okay. Car's going to go look for Phyllis.
Find Phyllis.
And we're going to continue to bibble babble.
We're just going to bibble babble at you. And maybe, hopefully some people will join us. That would be fun.
Yeah, right now it doesn't look like anyone's
but I did
in the stream.
I took the picture.
Someone just joined.
Oh, yay. Who's here?
I don't know. I just saw the little pop up.
Well, hello, person.
One person's watching.
Hello. That's why I took the picture and put it on Facebook to let you guys know, hey, come over here because we're talking right now.
Yep.
It would be one thing if we were constantly streaming and you could come in and out if you're here. Unfortunately,
Hi, Alyssa.
Hey, Alyssa. It just doesn't make sense for the stream to go the entire time. That's why,
among other things, we would get mega bad lag eventually.
Yes.
So Phyllis, hi. Carefully.
I just very carefully. Come
join us.
Because you can't. You're set up here.
Yep.
Okay.
So here's Phyllis, Alyssa, and
much better with the shades on.
Classy. Yeah. Alyssa and whoever else is with us currently. If you have any questions for Phyllis, hey Quinn, hey QQ,
hey QQ,
happy solstice, Alyssa. If you have any questions for Phyllis, drop them in the chat and we'll read them out. But first, hi, I'm Ode.
Hi, Ode. Nice to meet you.
I'm Gwen.
Hi, Gwen.
It's very nice to meet you.
And this
thrilled
is
to have you on.
Phyllis Curott.
Yeah, this is Phyllis Curott. I hope we're saying your name right.
Yes.
Okay.
You are. We don't really know how to say it. It's Norwegian with a French spelling.
Oh boy.
My father's people are from Michigan, actually. Pentwater.
Okay.
Yeah, he had a farm. He was a sea captain, but he had a blueberry farm.
Oh, neat.
So I love coming back to Michigan. I'm really happy
returning to your roots.
Yeah, and I'm returning to the community after a long hiatus. So it's like really cool to come back. When the invitation came to come to Michigan Pagan Fest, I was like, that's a really appropriate, you go back home to start again.
This is cool. This is only our second year at Michigan Pagan Fest, but what we are feeling about Michigan Pagan Fest from the very moment we arrived last year was that this is a very family reunion kind of feeling. And last year we didn't know hardly anyone. We had sort of just entered the pagan community. This year we came in, we saw all our friends, got to give everybody hugs, and it was very much like a family reunion because you only see these people once or twice a year,
which is why everybody loves each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Only see each other at your best.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we did an introduction for you while we were
We-
waiting.
Did you
for
really?
We read your bio.
Yes,
You read my bio.
But
So
tell us,
tell us.
I read my
secrets.
bio. I'm like, wow,
Tell
you
us-
did all that, and was depressed while you were
and
doing
that's
it.
the thing. Is you have
See,
done
that's
some.
yeah.
You've done some amazing things for the pagan community over the years as a priestess, as a lawyer, as an author. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you
Tell us the secrets that aren't on the bio.
Yeah, tell us what isn't on the.
I love chocolate and long walks on the beach.
Uh-huh.
Oh no, that's the public stuff. Right? Actually, those are the secrets. What can I tell you? I mean, the story of how I ended up practicing witchcraft was the first book I did, From Shadows, and I cannot believe the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, it's
Freaked
amazing.
me out. I was like, I went out for pizza. I got depressed for a few years, and you're telling me 20 years has gone by? Yeah, apparently. And that book was a breakthrough for me, discovering a new role as a writer, because I'd already been practicing for, like 20 years when I wrote it.
Yeah.
And I waited a long time. A lot of people were putting books out, but they felt like they were like a lot of what's out right now. Well intended, but now I'm going to really date myself. But these were like Xerox copies of Xerox copies of Xerox copies. It was like,
You lose a little more information each time.
and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, here's the recipe. Here's the recipe. And it's like, that's not what magic is. When I look back at what had brought me to the craft and what had happened and what magic was really. I mean, I wrote about the coven. I wrote about how we cast spells. I wrote about how we created a circle. I wrote about how we drew down all these things which, 40 years ago, there were a handful of people doing this, and everybody was in the
And now they're
closet.
the standards.
Instagram.
Yeah, exactly.
Like people who don't know what they're doing, and they're like, I did a little research for you guys, and they have 500,000 people watching it, and I'm like, I want to kill myself. Which is one reason I'm like, I think you need to go back to work. And it was part of what made me go back to work in that way as a writer 20 years ago, because the practice was starting to spread. The internet was happening, publishing was starting to happen. But it was mechanical. It was like the universe is a machine. And magic is a way to manipulate it. Say the right thing, use the right herbs, do it at the right time of day, pull the lever.
Sort of a scientific view of magic.
In a way, yeah. I mean, it's the magical side. It's a way. It's the occult equivalent of the scientific view. Universe is a machine, and we manipulate it this way and get what we want out of it. And my experience of magic was not that. I realized as I was writing the story of how I came to witchcraft, that the greatest magic was not the spells that we cast, although they were fantastic and they worked. Very often it blew my mind. And it wasn't in the potion or the whatever, although we created these amazing things. A solar blast spell will really change everything. But the real magic for me, I realized, was the presence of the divine in my life. You could call it goddess, you could call it Athena, you could call it the green. You could put, because it shapeshifts, you could call it by any name. But the more important thing was that it was calling me. I think it's calling us. And the greatest magic was the presence of the divine leading me on this extraordinary adventure into realms of spirit. And more importantly, back into this world. And suddenly, when I came back with the ability to see the world as it really was, to see the world as sacred, right? So it wasn't just the old patriarchal model out there somewhere, or the New Age model,
and the mundane,
spiritual,
and the profane,
right? And nature isn't something. And I still have that habit myself of wrong thinking that you use the air or you use the water or no, you work with them because everything embodies the divine. The divine is alive and palpable and with us. And so that was the first book, and then Witchcrafting. I did a lot of deconstructing of what seemed to me patriarchal thinking and why the threefold law was nonsense.
Yeah.
And
No offense to anybody who uses it.
No offense.
No.
I hope I offend you because it's nonsense, and I'm happy to discuss it with you at greater length.
That's fine. Yeah, we
No, you need to get past it.
none of us here subscribe to the threefold law. So
but that's not saying that therefore it's okay to hex, which is actually the journey for the last 10 years when I was away from the community was. Most people, if you look on my Howcast videos, spellcasting has 186,000 views. Ethics has like 8,000.
Yeah.
People don't care, and yet why we do what we do, how we view the world, how we live in the world, how we experience magic, how we experience the divine, why we're really truly called to this path. Who we are and who we're meant to be, the reason that I don't care what your tradition is, the reason that you are, and everybody's path is unique, but we're traveling. I've been doing this for 40 years now, more, and I know people from countless traditions and all over the world, and we all have a somewhat unique way. We also all have very similar essential practices, honoring the directions, usually working in circle,
hospitality,
above, below, the center, graciousness, the honoring of the sacred, the honoring of the earth. There are these sort of fundamental things, but the most fundamental is that we're here for a reason, and the world is in crisis right now.
Yeah.
An ever-escalating crisis.
I woke up this morning, and the only reason that we're not, at war with Iran is because at the last minute, he got scared, he freaked out, and he was like, maybe I shouldn't push the button.
Yeah.
And worse than that is the environmental crisis that the world that you're going to face.
We're rapidly reaching a point of no return.
Exactly.
Of no matter what we do, at this point, it's too late.
And it is too late, and it isn't too late. We have to.
It's not too late.
It isn't.
Exactly. Here's what's fascinating about the environmental crisis. Everyone frames this as, and then this is going to be a brief digression.
No, it's good.
The environmental crisis is framed as if the planet is dying. The planet will survive us. The planet will, at the end of it all, be fine. Our species will stop existing, and then the planet will equal out.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but it's a little more tragic than that.
Over millennia, but
it's a little more tragic than that because we are taking with us.
Oh yeah, we'll take everything else with us.
50% of the plants and the
animals. Life as we know it. That's what it's
destroyed.
Yeah. Sorry.
And it's. We don't have a concept of sin in this spirituality.
Right.
If we did, that would be it.
Yeah.
Right? We're murdering. We are responsible for murdering, and totally unacceptable. So I'm completely convinced that the reason that this is now, that witchcraft specifically, and then paganism in the sort of broader category, because there are all these ethnic revivals and blah, 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 that the reason that this is happening and is the fastest growing spirituality in America, which I started saying in the 90s, and which now finally the Pew Research Foundation has, using the same statistical analyses that I was presenting in the 90s, and they were referring to that now, going, 20 years later.
Look at that.
Oh, look at that. It's the fastest growing spirituality in America. But now the numbers are in fact so large that it cannot be denied.
Yeah.
And we've made so much progress, and it's so pervasive. It truly is everywhere. But why? Okay, so a lot of people come at the beginning because they're looking for power, because it's a rebellion, because it's an affirmation of, whatever, that your unique expression is, because you're rejecting patriarchy, blah, 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 blah. Okay, because you want to cast a spell and get a new boyfriend. Because we're powerless, and people who are powerless are always drawn to these indigenous magical traditions. It's one of the characteristics of magical traditions is that it's right the religion of the poor, the impoverished, right? Because we don't have power. So the power that we
It's outsider
need,
power.
the power that we need is already within and all around us. It's the power and the wisdom. It's what you were saying in a slightly different take, that the earth will recreate herself, that her deep magic, the magic of the divine embodied by the earth, is this gift of rebirth.
Yeah.
That the forms change, but the energy is constantly taking new form. There's a reason that this movement is growing beyond the personal gratification or the personal validation or anything else. We are being called by the divine, embodied by Mother Earth, to do what we are meant to do, to learn how to live in a sacred way, because we're part of a sacred planet. And that's what a witch is. A witch is a wise one. We were the shamans of our people. We were the ones who went into the realms of spirit and came back with healing, with wisdom, with, over here is the herd and over there is the water, and this is your path as you go out into life, and this is your name. But more importantly, we come back with the gift of sight.
Yeah.
Not just what we see in realms of spirit, but what we see here as the embodiment of spirit. And that is what we are called to. We are called now to be the conscience of humanity, to bring us back to living in peace and harmony with the planet.
Because it used to be that job. It used to be that job was maintaining right relationship.
Yep.
That job was maintaining a good sacred relationship.
That was
now,
the purpose of the witch and the wise woman.
Now, because of the way history has turned, that job has changed from maintaining right relationship to restoring right relationship, which is a much harder job.
Oh my God!
It's much harder than maintaining equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you have to drive societal change before you can get to equilibrium.
And witchcrafting is now the fastest growing spirituality in the United States. And you want to ask me about my history? That's been my drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From the minute I walked in the door, before I was even initiated, on the night of my initiation, when the book fell off the shelf, I told the story of the Book of Shadows, and it opened to Aradia, and I read it, and I was like, oh, that's mm-hmm. And I in an instant was like, oh, that's my name, that's my craft name. And on the night that I was initiated, because I came in through, it was avant-garde, it was the Minoan Sisterhood, but it was a neo-Gardnerian tradition. The roots went back to Gerald. I mean, there wasn't much else around. Maybe Victor Anderson with a little fairy stuff off on the West Coast, and even he. In that moment, it was like, this is the wisdom the world has lost. And this is your job. And this is what you do. And so almost immediately, even though it was completely hidden, I was public. In 1982, 1983, I was public. And then I took on the legal cases so people could perform legally binding marriages in New York, so that people could incorporate as churches and temples across the country, so that you could wear a pentacle and not get kicked out of school, so you could keep custody of your kids. And a lot of those cases weren't my cases because I was not a lawyer in Michigan or Texas, but I consulted on them and I hooked them up with ACLU lawyers and I consulted with the attorneys. And I, this is how you do it. The pentacle on the military grave, right? That was finally handled by Americans United.
That was a big one.
And that case was close to jumping the rails. So from the very beginning, it was clear to me that this was the wisdom the world had lost. And the wound that it opened in our souls, that's 5,000 years old, right? When we started to go blind and to say God's someplace else, and this is inanimate and we can do whatever we want with it.
Right.
We can manipulate it, we can control it. And a lot of magic
still has that.
It was still this Victorian, it was making progress, but it was still this very patriarchal.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a patriarchal notion of magic as the wizard and controlling the forces and manipulating the forces of nature.
Yeah,
It's
you bind
you bind.
and manipulate and
Exactly.
demand and
Exactly.
and command and all that stuff.
and punish.
As opposed to working with allies, of being allied with
Yes.
nature
and aligned
with nature and with the moon
the spirits.
and the spirits and the divine. And I was just reading the other day an article. It was actually on Pathos, and it was from a Christian perspective of how the earth was given to human beings to use.
Oh God.
Right? And then that,
Which
and so
I vaguely
I
recall
was just like-
from my brief time in Christianity as a child that it was given to humans in custody, as in take
Yeah,
care
right,
of this.
exactly.
But that doesn't seem
and
to have
so
been
and I
maintained.
feel like there are so many of us though coming out of a patriarchal religion. As I think you mentioned this earlier, we are bringing this into the craft.
Yeah.
So that
You bring
we
your
are-
baggage with you,
You
obviously.
bring your baggage with you, and so we are, instead of
Reconduit.
aligning and instead of being allianced with nature, we are using it.
Right.
And I think this is important. A shift has to be made.
That's the work I'm doing now.
Yeah.
That's one reason I came back. I mean, part of my perspective was always informed by the fact that the very beginning, when I was working with my coven in New York, training with them, I was simultaneously working with the very first group that came out of Dr. Michael Horner's work, the core shamanism,
the core shamanism.
Brooklyn group.
Yep.
And so from the very beginning, the two things were intertwined. And my priestesses didn't explain anything, really. There was no teaching. There was just doing. So I just sort of figured it all out myself. And it was really clear to me right away that witchcraft was a form of shamanism. It was burdened and overlaid with all of this Victorian, esoteric, occult, magical.
A lot of it
stuff.
came down
Alchemy.
from the old alchemists.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was one of the. I mean, this is a big conversation, but the
Which, again,
intellectual
is a very-
survival,
yeah,
right.
in the hands of men during the Renaissance
Exactly,
and all that stuff, right? Good, better than not having
Right.
it preserved.
At least we have this. Yes.
Right. But when you strip away all that stuff, which is what I started to do almost immediately, and that was witchcrafting, was that. And you distill these things to their essentials. You simplify, you focus, and if you're paying attention, and to me that's what this ultimately is, then you're coming into a kind of true awakening and what
Right
indigenous
relationship.
right what indigenous traditions always call right relationship, and it's you let go of the need to control and to manipulate and to we are so far behind the learning curve. We're so. I adore science because science is at least the attempt to begin to understand how it's misused, like magic being misused to control, by capitalism. So that's another issue. But at its heart, the desire to understand, right? And the other way to understand is our method, is through ecstatic practice and through altered states of consciousness and through the opening of intuition and all of these capacities.
The intellectual versus the emotional understanding.
They don't have to be versus,
Fair, yeah.
In fact, they're integrated, and that's the thing about balance, right? Masculine and feminine, the range of polarity between the two. There's a union, and there's a polarity, and there's science, and there's intuitive wisdom. And they're not opposites, as in gender. And that's sort of the thing about the whole fluidity in gender now. It's like they're not opposites, right? There is this range within. There is a relationship. There's a relationship, and the real relationship in polarity is a bond that holds things together. There's a union. For me, the bond is ultimately really is love. It truly is love. That the energy of life, in fact, is love. So the challenge now is, we used to be the agents of maintaining right relationship, and now, and beautifully said, and I'm going to borrow it from you, the relationship is the restoration of right relations. And how do you do that? I really think that the essential practices, not the over elaborate,
Right.
that the essential practices are incredibly valuable. After not practicing for a while and then coming back to it, it was like, oh, you mean all that rigmarole for all those years? It wasn't about the rigmarole and the gesticulate. It was about breathing. So what happened? So I mean, this is one of the things I'm going to talk about in the Nature's Secret Magic. When I had gone through this gruesome depression because my own community fractured, and I really felt like, what are we doing if we're eating our own? You know, how are we really practicing in a way that makes us better? If we're mistreating each other, you know,
Where did we screw up?
where's the magic and where's the spirituality and where's
Witch Wars.
right?
Yeah.
Oh my God! And you know, in the beginning, and it's still going, which was terrible. I took off for a while and I stopped practicing, and I entered into an amazing adventure in pursuit of a deeper understanding of who we are and where we are, and why the heck we're here. And the moment of reawakening for me was the mother basically whispering in my ear, and she was like, "Are you done now? Are you done destroying yourself with your self-doubt and your doubt about everything?" Because I was still working, I was still running the parliament, I was still not running the parliament, but I was the vice chair of the parliament. I created the women's inaugural. I was working my ass off, right? It was the first time that I got witches and pagans on the plenary stage. The goddess was on the main stages because they've tolerated us.
Right.
We were always right
Quietly in a corner.
Right. So I was working. I was always working, but it was the whisper in my ear when I was sitting in my garden after chasing all over the world in pursuit of the green man, and she just whispered in my ear, and she said, "Just breathe," because I was in a dark place from all of the damage we do to each other and the damage we've done to this planet, and my doubts about our path, and she just was like, "Breathe," and I breathed, and I was like, "Look, I'm breathing. Oh yeah, prana, chi, right? Okay."
Right.
And exhale my toxins. She's like, "Just quiet. Just stop talking. Just breathe." And I breathed, and the second breath, with my mind a little quieter, I started to feel this energy. And when I exhaled, I noticed the leaves on the trees like dancing in response to my exhale. And when I inhaled, I literally felt and saw them sending this breath of life to me. And I had this opening. The blindfold came off, right? And I could see the sacred in the world in which I lived. And what I saw was that all of the green things,
So we have quite a few around right now.
Yes, we do.
were breathing for me. Were they had spent the night in photosynthesis, blah, 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 and they were exhaling oxygen, the breath of life, for me. And I was bringing them and their gift of breath of life, of life itself, into me. And I could feel and I could feel it, right? When you're breathing properly. And there are entire practices that are nothing but that, right? Buddhist meditation and yoga, and a lot of my practice now has come to our version of that. And then I realized how wrong I'd been for so many years, because this is what we were taught. Exhale your tension. Exhale your toxins. Put your garbage in the water, right?
Yeah.
Clear. And it was like, that's not what I'm doing. When I'm exhaling, I have created for them in my metabolism the waste, carbon dioxide, which is the breath of life for them.
Yep.
And as I exhaled, I saw them.
Yeah. We're in a symbiotic relationship with our entire planet.
Forget the word it is, but now take away that word.
Mm-hmm.
We are in a life exchanging relationship. Every breath that you take is a gift of life from the green
From the greenest
and
thing
sisters.
next to you.
And every breath that you exhale is a gift of life back to them. You could say that we exist for each other.
Yeah.
Because we certainly can't live without them. They could live without us because there are other living creatures on the planet who will do this for them. But when you become aware, suddenly I realized I was no longer alone. That all I had to do when I got confused or anxious or overwhelmed or despairing was to breathe. And in that moment of breathing, I was being loved and given life by the planet, and I was giving it back, and the feeling of love. So it's the circle, and what is the binding energy of the circle? It's life, and it's this love. I felt this love for their generosity, and I wanted to return it to them. And suddenly I began to think, this is the point of what we're doing. It wasn't that, and I summoned her and call you. Okay, thank you. I'm glad I at least learned that.
Right.
It is breathe and see what you are doing and feel the relation. And now we know science, right? They've studied Buddhist meditation, breath meditation, into which a mantra is introduced or compassionate heart, right? This is what the Dalai Lama teaches and all of his monks, and they're marvelous. And I've spent a lot of time with these guys because of my parliament, my interfaith work. If you meditate with this image or word or emotion, compassion, it changes the brain and it changes the personality and it changes who you are. So it's time to change who we are from witches who are like, I'm going to cast this little spell, I'm going to get a new boyfriend, and like level 1, which is fine. I did it. I loved it. It was great. You learn a lot from it. To why we're really here, to what we are being called to do, and restoring right relationship. Restoring right relationship is and experiencing the divine embodied by creation, by the earth, seeing the sacred in the world, living in a sacred way because we live in a sacred world. We're part of a sacred world. Is as simple as breathing, or how you work with the earth, or how you work with life. Our practices can bring us back to a state of ecstatic, harmonious, abundant, peaceful, wise, the way it's meant to be. That's our job.
Yeah.
That's why I came back to work. That's what I'm teaching. That's what I'm talking. That's what I'm writing about. I am passionate about this. You can do all sorts of things. Do it in your own way. Do your own unique path. The call to action is pick an element that speaks to you. I mean, use the practices in these more simple, these more direct and intimate, revelatory ways. Pick an element: air, energy consumption, fire, water, flint, earth, something. Pick one, learn about it, work with it magically, let it teach you, figure out what is needed where you live. How is it injured? How is it wounded? How is it damaged? And become an activist where you live in service of this particular element. And when you've done that, then you can go on to the next one.
Start healing.
And
act in accord.
My practice is as a green
done.
witch. No, okay.
Please talk, Phyllis. That's why you're here.
No, my practice.
But you got to do it now because we have 5 minutes.
Okay. My practice is as a green witch, and so that is something that I was taught from the beginning is to be part of nature, to be in relationship with nature. And I wanted to ask. I know there are so many books out there right now on how to do this, how to do that. Do you feel like this intimacy, this understanding of nature, this union with nature, do you feel like that's missing from a majority of what's being taught to new people?
Yeah,
I think a lot of what's
why
out to
I'm
new
back
people
to
as
work.
mechanical.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I did, I hadn't worked in a while, and I hadn't written in a long time. And I went on this adventure, which is the subject of finally the next memoir about my journey with the Green Man. And then this epiphany when I came home after traveling the world. And I started to write. I was like, no one's going to believe this story because it was off the charts. We don't have time to go into it. But I started to work on it. And it was really difficult because I hadn't written in a long time. But I got enough outlined in chapters, and I was like, okay, this is the story and this is the structure of how I want to tell it. And with it, I want to do a small book called First Principles, which was this revelation of the mother, of like, this is how I do it. This is how, creation is organized to create and sustain life. And everything lives according to this except you guys, and you're wrecking everything. So I want to share this with you now. And I've gone on this journey to understand it. So that was the other book. And I was starting, and I felt like there was a piece missing from that. I wasn't ready to write that little book. I was ready to write the memoir. So I called my agent, and I was like, are you still my agent? I know I haven't written anything in 14 years. Are you still? And she was like, yeah. What have you got? And I was like, well, I've got this memoir, this story of this encounter that I had in Italy where the Green Man literally appeared to me in the middle of the labyrinth at the beginning of my keeping of my initiatory commitment on that night when I was first initiated, and I took the name Aradia, and I found myself making this promise that I would open the world to witchcraft and that I would go to Italy to help bring the old religion back.
And it's a big promise to make.
And
on the night of your initiation.
Where it came from. I mean, 3 coins in the fountain. But Italy. And there I was, fulfilling that promise, initiating people that I'd been working with for quite a number of years. And the Green Man appeared, literally appeared. And a year later, when I went back, one of the students had been observing while I was in the middle of making this offering, and I had felt this, and I was afraid to turn around. I had felt this energy come up from the earth. And I was offering my 3rd book, which I had literally finished while I was there. And they had a photograph.
Oh my gosh.
Taken. Wow. And it was the Green Man. Not like, oh, it looks sort of, no, it was like a picture of you standing. And I had told no one of this.
Of the feeling.
There he was standing behind me.
Wow.
And I went off on this journey then, which was an astonishing adventure around the world and finding him and what it meant and why. And he had said to me, there was no language when he appeared, none. It was the most extraordinary, because I suddenly realized, especially me, how utterly dependent on language we are as human beings.
Yeah.
We think in words, no language. And then finally, there was this struggle,
to sort of smash some knowledge into
but to how do you communicate?
Yeah. How do you
know
convey your intention? Yeah.
Without a word, right? And I felt this struggle. It was on my part, and suddenly there was a word, protect. And I thought at the time that he was saying, don't be afraid, I'm protective.
But it's the other way around.
It took me almost
It was not a reassurance,
years.
it was a command.
It was a command.
It was, and I traveled around the world, and when I came home, that's when I had the epiphany with the mother and the breathing, and it was like, that's my job.
Yeah.
That's the job.
So how do we convey that to young witches? And since we have
I'm going to write a book
books,
about it. I'll write the memoir. I'll write the book.
Because we have so many,
And we'll teach.
There's online lessons, there's books, there's all this stuff that's all teaching just this other stuff that is not saying, hey, we are meant to be a protector. We are meant to be in relationship with the earth. We are not called to use the earth. We are called to build up the earth, if you will, and to work with her. I mean, this is our earth mother. We are,
literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
And,
Well, how?
Okay. So how do we convey this? Like, for instance, you were saying, the law of three, sorry guys, is crap. So
General Gardner made it up because Doreen came to him and said, people are coming to this more often now. And this was like in the 1950s when it was like 5 people. We need some. We're religion. We need some kind of morality.
rules,
So he'd been in India, so he made up the threefold laws.
Which, if you think about it, is a lot like
It's a patriarchal rule.
It's a patriarchal rule. It's like the golden rule.
Yeah.
No, it's worse. What it says is it's quick an aside. What it says is, this is what it says: if you do something bad, something worse will happen to you.
Yeah.
It's a rule.
It's retributive.
It's a rule based that's enforced by punishment. That's patriarchal. If you live in a sacred world, you don't need that because if you're living in a sacred world, then you're seeking to live in a sacred way. You're motivated not by fear of punishment. You're motivated by love, by desire. You're motivated by, thank you for the gift of life. Let me give it back to you. Oh my goddess, what a state of ecstasy. I can enter into this divine relationship just by paying attention to the reality of what is happening with every single breath I take. The divine is a breath away. It changes everything. And the practice is to take it from an idea to a lived, embodied experience. Okay, so you asked me. So here's the thing. So the long-winded story, right? So the agent says to me, "So your publisher died while you were away." I was like, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, they died." So who do you want to publish your books? She was being a little tough on me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I've given it a lot of thought. I would like it to be Hay House." She said, "Hay House, they're a New Age publisher." I said, "Yeah, but I really believe that the New Age community, I've always believed this, is a natural affinity. That it's like the divine is elsewhere out there, spirit and light.
We have more in common with the New Age than we
have
like to think.
a lot in common.
We could work together. We have some fundamental differences in some things, but not enough to make a difference.
A lot of overlap. And Louise Hay was a witch, whether she would use that word or not. And it's a whole conversation about like how you can transform, like we were talking about before with meditation, how easily it becomes magic. The term that we use of magic, of how the Buddhists change who they are and how they are by focusing on the heart and compassion and how it makes them more magic. Okay, so I say Hay House and she goes, "Okay, so finish up the proposal and send it over to me and I'll get it to them." I opened my email the next morning. And there's an email from Hay House. She had not called them. It was an email from Hay House saying, "We'd like you to write this little book." They didn't expect me to do it. It was for their Made Easy series. Made Easy series, which is like people with expertise writing about
a narrow topic.
Well, about this, shamanism or Buddhism, or so they wanted me to do Wicca. So I said, yes. They fell off their chairs because they didn't think I would do it, and I did it. It's Wicca. It's the classic, and this is how, but it's the opposite of mechanical because everything is about the point of doing it, which is to take off the blindfold and experience this embodied divinity, to awaken the magic within you. And what is that magic? It's the living divinity that is and this, what is magic? Magic is the divine flowing into you and through you into the world. It's that communion. So I wrote that little book. It's not mechanical. And now I'm doing an online class. They came back to me and they said, "Will you do an online class?" I was like, "What?" They said, "Witchcraft. Let's call it what it is." I was like, "Really? You sure you're ready for this?" They were like, "Yeah." I said, I can't reduce witchcraft to 8 hours. It'll become mechanical. They're like, no, you can do it. So I did. And it's not mechanical. I mean, these are the steps. This is how you cast a circle. But everything is, what's the point?
Right. Why are you doing it?
Why are you doing it? Which was what witchcrafting was.
I think that's
so it's a starting
from
place.
a lot of things. Yeah. It's just like you said, just telling this is why you do it, or this is what you're doing, this is how you do it.
I think the answer to why. I think the answer to why is this missing. is that a lot of the people who are writing the books don't know the answer.
Yeah,
Right.
they don't know. They're just repeating what they've been
The
taught.
Xerox copy of the Xerox
Yeah.
copy of the Xerox.
And nobody really knows
Yeah.
Date myself.
why.
But we're very much
Right.
returning to that. Yeah.
Yeah, we need
That
that.
experience.
We need that
Well,
experience.
You know, yes, because otherwise, you know, it's God in a dress. It's what I see. You know, it's amazing what's happened with Instagram and with the internet, which was an enormous boost to the growth of the community in the 90s, right? Because suddenly people weren't alone. They had community. You could be in, you know, a little tiny town in Michigan or down south, and you weren't alone anymore.
Yeah, we have actually a large community in our Three Pigs and a Cat podcast.
We have
through
listeners in
Facebook,
Australia.
and so we've been able to bring a lot of people who are new to the craft together,
So important.
and they're living in places where
They'll never
have
meet each
anybody
other.
else.
Exactly.
But yeah.
But you're doing substance, and part of the problem of, you know, when I look on Instagram, aside from, you know, pardon me, but, you know, I go to hashtag goddess, and it's like, and I'm like, I'm going to kill myself. Why did I bother? You know, why did I?
It's true. You got to admit it. It's true.
Or you get the
Instagram witches have a
Yeah.
hashtag aesthetic.
Yeah.
or right.
Witches of Instagram, and everybody's
Some of
comparing
it's
themselves.
fabulous.
Oh yeah, some of it's beautiful.
Oh my
it's so
God.
And
beautiful.
sometimes, if you're following the right people, or if you get lucky, you can find something that is both beautiful and
you're smart
substantial.
and
Right.
substantial.
There's some gorgeous stuff. Really, initially I was horrified, and then I was like, okay, just take a deep breath. You know, talk to the trees, and the trees are like, what are you gonna do? You know,
Right.
there's poison oak and there's poison ivy, and you know, so just and keep looking, and there is some really gorgeous. And what's fascinating, and this is really interesting, and I don't see anybody really doing it yet. I mean, people are putting spells on Instagram, but I don't really see people making magic
No.
on Instagram, and that's
Which is
what I'm
interesting
interested
because
in.
Yeah.
if you do anything with sigils or
Right.
stuff like that, Instagram, perfect opportunity to spread a sigil just to a wider audience, because sigils work on sort of I call them shoals. So the more people who see it, the more just latent energy they pick up, and then they just keep on doing
They keep doing their
work.
Their work.
Yeah,
They just keep on chugging along.
it's an interesting conversation. I have some about sigils. To me, it's a
That's
little.
fine.
It's too abstracting, and it's like you know, it's like Kabbalistic esoteric magic, and there's really a lot of truth and a lot of wisdom and a lot of power in symbols. I'm a big symbols, but yeah,
So-
but there's a danger of abstraction,
So I'm an animist.
which we tend towards anyway. Yes.
So when I make a sigil, my viewpoint, which might be niche, is that every spell I create, including every sigil, is a little spirit, because spirits are energy, and so if a thing has energy, it has a spirit.
Right.
So every sigil I create is for lack of a better word, person.
Yeah.
It's a spirit. It has an identity.
Yeah.
It does the job that I ask it to do because I created it and it loves me.
Yeah.
And when that job is done, I set it free to go either dissipate or to become something new.
Have you read The Tempest?
No. Wait. Yes.
You should read The Tempest.
Yes. No, I have read The Tempest.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah, I have read The Tempest many moons ago.
Many moons
back
ago.
in high school.
Yep.
It's good. It's fine. Far be it from me to criticize, and I respect. I think you're doing the work with integrity.
Criticize if you like.
No. I just think that.
So literally, it was like.
I'm getting old, and I don't know how much time I have left, and people have to make their journeys, and heavens knows, and the earth knows, that I have taken some long digressions into deep caves, and so I come back and I sound like my mother, and I'm like, really, are you sure you want that tattoo in the middle of your forehead, because you're never gonna get a job. Yeah, so I know I'm sounding a little bit like a grumpy old lady who's telling everybody what to do. I know. And you have to walk your path, and you have to go the way you're called. And if you go the way you're called, I think, you'll learn. And one thing I do know is that everybody's paths are absolutely unique. But right now, the thing that seems most pressing, and it could be because I know my time is limited, right? You don't know that. I didn't know that when I was
Right.
your
It's
age.
hard to know viscerally.
Right. I know it viscerally. And knowing my own, it's very resonant with the wisdom that the knowledge that the mother has been communicating. And while our personal work and the creation of sigils and a binding ritual on a bad boyfriend and all these things are important and ways to learn, the greater learning that is demanded of us right now is this service to something far greater than ourselves. It is to the 50% of the creatures with whom we're sharing this planet, whom we are killing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm aware that when I get on a plane to come to Michigan, that I'm participating.
You're contributing.
Yeah. It's one reason I agreed to do the online course. Because I don't really like that as a medium. I like to be in person. But I can't go to Australia. And I can't go to Hungary. And I'm not going... if I travel once or twice, and I'll go, I'll travel a little bit more, but I'm trying to. It's an aside. I feel that we have so much to learn about how to live in this world that it requires of us a tremendous humility and attentiveness to the wisdom that is everywhere around us and is a part of who we are, but that we have not been attending to as witches, as Americans, as whatever we are, and that's the path that is the shared path that we must walk now. Because if we don't, you won't be able to create a sigil. The pleasures of personal magic will be irrelevant. I lived on the water for the last 17 years, and I sold my house in November. And when I bought it, it was small, it was old, it was mine, and I thought, I will live and I will die here. And I wrote my third book there, and that's where it was, in that garden in a little circle surrounded by the apple trees, that I had this epiphany. And it's where I buried my familiar, and this was my home. And I fought a battle to preserve land in the little tiny town. And I mean, I was all in. And the waters are rising. In 17 years that I lived there, the waters it was on the water. It was on an estuary that came in from the Peconic Bay, which is this big body of water that comes off the Atlantic between the forks of Long Island.
Okay.
So I was here, this little tiny, itty bitty little town full of old houses that fishermen used to live in, that stuck out into the water. And the waters were high when I left. In comparison, the marsh across from my house had lost 2/3 of the marsh grass, and the land was underwater. When it rains, the road in the front was flooded. There is no question about what is happening. I lived with it every day. I saw it, and I could talk about it at length about the disappearance of the ospreys are back, but all these fish. I could see it. It's a more rural area. There's a lot of retirees and overdevelopment, but it's fishing and farming and now vineyards. But I could see it. And we don't have a lot of time. So I say, yes, do your own work, do your sigils, but attend to the wisdom of Mother Earth. Pay attention to what is happening. Listen, because she'll tell you. She will speak to you as clearly as yes, I pay attention, but there's nothing extraordinary about me. In fact, that was part of the struggle I had about talking about this. It's like, who am I? I'm just another person. Nobody's going to listen to, and go, oh, I had a vision. I saw the green man and the mother talked to me and this is what she told me. And people will be like, yeah, whatever. But the fact is she'll talk to everybody if we'll listen. She's yelling. And and witches and pagans in particular are supposed to be listening.
Yeah.
You said that was our job, was to maintain the balance, the right relationship. And so the great magic, beyond the small magics of our personal lives, which will teach us a lot, and give us good things and good lives. But the great magic that we are being called to is the magic of saving our brothers and our sisters and our mother.
Yeah.
You're right, she'll recover. But in the meantime, this ecstatic perfection that took 6 billion years to create,
to get to this point.
I cannot, if we don't survive, we don't deserve to survive. But if one creature dies because of our stupidity, I was impaled by that grief. For 6 years, I couldn't function, and now I'm back and I'm propelled by that grief. Whatever time I have, and the thing is that when you give yourself to it, it's not like the despair goes away or the pain goes away. Because you cannot do this work and open yourself and not feel it, right? But then, she gives you, and he gives you, they give you, it gives you, because it's also without gender, right? The divine embodied by creation gives us everything. It gives us air to breathe and water to drink and food to eat and, energy to live with. And all of those things are blessings beyond measure. And all we need to do is attend to them, care for them, and they will heal us and empower us and guide us and nourish and bless us and empower us to do this work.
Now, if you
want to make a sigil, send it to me. I'd like to see it. But I'm like, that's good. But I want you to go outside and I want you to breathe.
Oh yeah, no.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh no, sorry. I'm not saying like
go outside and play.
I'm not saying like just do a sigil.
No.
Okay.
I'm saying sigils are a relatively easy and accessible form of magic that don't require a lot of hoopla.
Yeah.
So
it's a focus.
They're straightforward.
Yeah. Now I'm going to kind of
question of creating an entity though is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
The ethics
of that,
I'm a little.
Oh, I understand why you're leery. My position is that everyone's already doing this and not taking responsibility for it.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But I need you to not focus on taking responsibility for the sigil and take responsibility for the air and the water and the grass and the.
Oh, you can do both.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, because you're going to be teaching 2 classes?
I'm going to do the talk, which is Nature's Secret Magic, which we haven't really talked about, which is freaking amazing.
Which is today, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to be going.
Which was
to
the final piece of the puzzle that I got. It was like when she sort of delivered these creation principles, these first principles, and there was a piece missing, and I finally got it 2 years ago, and I was like, bingo, that's it. That's the ethic for paganism, for witchcraft. It's not the threefold law. It is certainly not, and you harm none, do what you will, which is, so inadequate and calls us to nothing more than self-indulgence.
Yeah, it's
just
self-indulgence.
It's totally it's like, do whatever you want, just don't hurt anybody. Totally different. It's totally different. You are called into right relationship by the earth itself, by the way in which the earth organizes.
So
I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to do the practices on Saturday.
Oh, good.
Like breathing and blessing water, and something I call unnaming, which is how to learn from a plant or a shell or a seed or whatever, how to be taught by it, how to become humble and open and taught by it. Is she not the greatest thing in the entire universe?
Yeah.
You have to take a picture. Oh, I'm supposed to hold up a picture.
Oh, she did that.
This is the new world.
Pictures are already up on Instagram.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so freaked by this because to me it seems like a combination of narcissism and voyeurism and weirdness. I'm this very private. I come out and write a book or I'll talk, but then I'm like, this is
now
my
stop looking
life.
at me.
You don't need to know that I'm I have a dog. I mean,
It looks like they've been having a conversation,
They have,
not
yes.
really asking any
I'm
questions.
sorry, it's because I
was-
can't stop talking.
There was one question Mariah wanted to know if you would consider.
Wait, I have to say, can I hug you?
You may.
This is the new etiquette. Too late.
Mariah wanted to know if you would consider human rights activism part of the work.
Yeah,
part of the
for
job.
sure, absolutely. If we, yeah, I mean, everybody's got their own path that's unique, and we need to be walking all of it. And if we can't be compassionate, and take care of one another, we're not going to be able to take care of anything beyond. And the calls for it now
Hypothetically, it should be easiest to be compassionate to something that looks like you.
Exactly.
But it's remarkable
hypothetically.
how difficult that turns out to be
Exactly.
for so many people.
we are so far from who we're meant to be. And of course, we will have a great challenge because Mother Nature made us in sort of two polar, and I'm not talking gender. She created us with a kind of conservative mindset, which tends to react to the strange and the unknown with tribalism and a certain amount of fear. And then
Which we're very much swinging. The pendulum is swinging in that direction right now.
Well, it's being pandered to and aggravated, as opposed to ameliorated. And then you have the liberal, to use our language, but you have the mindset of, oh look, who are you? Sit down, let's have a beer. Tell me about your God. This sort of inquisitive.
I guess I would call this the
accepting.
rejecting and the embracing.
You could. I mean, but psychologists have basically said it's sort of fear and tolerance and risk tolerance.
Yeah.
And you need both if a species is going to survive.
Right. Yeah.
But you need them to work together. And the right. I mean, I was talking about this in 2004 about the rise of fascism in this country and the global fascism, and the right has manipulated.
We're actually on
Rupert Murdoch does this deliberately, and the ultimate deliberately is to exacerbate fear and antagonism towards the other and to misdirect it.
Yeah.
So how we re-engage as a community
capitalism
to come together. Yeah, it's part of it. It's a great challenge. The one thing that some psychologists have been talking about is that the good news is that while you cannot change that tribal disposition to be antagonistic, you can expand the boundaries, right? And that's part of what the great challenge that we're facing as witches and pagans saying, no, the tree is literally connected
It's part of the
to
tribe.
me. It is part of the tribe, is to expand the tribe. That's part of our job, is to get people to see that the family, and that's why Indigenous peoples, especially Native American Indigenous peoples, all my relations, and they mean it. And it's true, and it's the way in which they've lived. A lot of, I think I think my work with core shamanism has been an enormous help in sort of stripping away all the patriarchal stuff that hangs on to Western magical traditions. Is this state of oneness, of understanding that it's not just a word of being interconnected, it is a relationship, it's a familial relationship, that the earth really is our mother and the sun really is a kind of father, and the plants are brothers and sisters, and the animals are brothers and sisters, and then we all require each other. We require each other. We're just starting to learn the ways in which we depend upon each other, and that we are dependent on each other. So this is the secret.
We knew about ecosystems decades ago. You'd think that it took this long.
Well, and I look at it like this. The other day, there was a news story about a Michigan woman who was vacationing in Florida, who she took a stick and she stirred up a sea turtle's nest, and then she started stomping on the eggs. Thankfully, none of the turtles were injured. The woman was arrested, thankfully, because that's illegal to do in Florida because they're endangered animals. But I feel like that kind of embodies kind of humanity's.
What's the decision making happening there?
It's like there's no respect, there's no concern, there's no. This is a part of life.
It's a kind of sociopathy.
And it is. But the problem is
sociopath in the White House.
And the problem is that's just humanity. That's humanity's opinion toward nature and toward the earth and toward our mother. And that is what we as witches, I believe, we have got to change that around.
I wonder if calling it nature is part of the problem.
Maybe that's part of the problem.
Well, call it Mother Nature. I mean,
I think humans, Hayutu, I think for some reason humans don't think of themselves as part of nature.
We kind of think of ourselves as outside.
We don't think of ourselves as animals.
Well, that's the fallacy. I call it's the fallacy of consciousness. We have an aberrant idea of reality, and we've lived with it for more than 5,000 years. So changing that, are we going to be able to change that? Our future, our lives, the planet depends upon it. And the good news is that species evolve when their survival depends upon it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, one of the greatest events in human history is, and it happens very rarely, is the birth of a new religion. We are in the process of rebirthing one of the most ancient religions, because witchcraft, in fact, the word witch comes from wicca. The word wicca has roots that are over 5,000 years old. It goes back to the Proto-Indo-European.
Yeah.
It's ancient, and that it was the period of shamanism. It's a universal wisdom tradition. All over the globe, all indigenous peoples have variations on it, and so did we. And that to me is the revival. And the practices work, and the practices are as simple as breathing. The purpose of any religion is to hold forth the great wisdom, whatever it is, in particular cultural tradition and a particular historical moment. Christianity served a radicalizing, love, universal love for other human
It
beings.
had a job.
Yeah, right. And of course, it gets distorted.
Right.
And
whether it
to some
accomplished that
extent-
job.
To some extent, that a little bit of what we've been talking about today is how it's gotten distorted. The inadvertent consequences, the unintended consequences of 20 years of let's get out, let's get the word out there and let's lay the path and fix the legal situation and make it, and go on media and deal with Bill O'Reilly and write books and make it possible. Go to the Parliament of the World's Religions and teach all these religious leaders, that they don't have to be afraid of witches or pagans or anything else, and make room on the global stage. And then all of a sudden, so you open the space and this rushes through, and they're doing mechanical magic. Most of them, they're calling themselves witches. They haven't even gotten halfway around the circle. It's all about intention and willpower and manipulating unseen forces. It's like, that's not witchcraft. That's esoteric magic. That's old Victorian magic.
But it's the entry point.
It's an entry point. Okay, but so now let's go to the next step.
Let's evolve to the next step.
Our job is that every religion is a rallying cry to the best of who we can be, should be, and are meant to be, as is needed at the moment, right? Our maturational history at this particular moment. There is a reason that witchcraft is the fastest growing spirituality in America now.
Oops.
And, and while it may seem that it's because of, that suddenly you have access to power, or in reality, there is a much deeper calling that's going on. And it is this calling. It's this ancient role. It's the most ancient role that we ever had. And as you started off this conversation, and you were right, in the old days, it was about maintaining right relationship between the liminal and the seemingly mundane, and showing people, how they could remove the blindfold and see that they were living in the sacred world and therefore live in the right ways. And now we're called to restore it. It's a much more challenging task, and it's challenging because we have to make our own.
Exactly. We have to first rediscover it before we can even begin restoring it to the rest of the world.
Exactly. But we can do it. We have everything we need is already within us. The practices are there. They just need to be streamlined. So okay. A lot of people were saying you need to come back to work. Like, I'm a little old. Like, no, like I'm the wrong generation. They're not going to get me. I'm not hip anymore. I look weird and old, and I'm like, Auntie Phyllis. And they're like, no, we need Auntie Phyllis. Oh, you mean like the wisdom that comes from 40 years of practice?
Yeah.
And they're like, you need to just mentor, and people will get it or they won't. Like, well, it's not about words. It's about the practices. And that's the wonderful thing about core shamanism was, I didn't really have a teacher. The drum was the teacher, and the method was the teacher. So I'm a great believer in the method. It allows for individual journeys, but truly we find we're traveling in the same landscape. And so, I'm going to teach the ways. And, the first step was, okay, this is Wicca, but this is why. We do this, we cast a circle, and you say this, and you do that. But this is why, all of it connects you back to the sacred, to the divine within you and in the world around you. It's all about that. And then the next step is, let's simplify the practices. The real challenge that I think, because I'm always interested in building these bridges into the broader, bigger
Culture,
is how to do this in a way that resonates for a New Age community, for a progressive Christian
For an
community,
outsider.
for a Buddhist
For people
community.
outside of the craft.
I truly believe, like, all these people are doing meditation. You don't have to be Buddhist to meditate. You don't have to be Hindu to practice yoga. You don't have to be an initiated witch or in a pagan tradition to do what I'm calling it green breathing, to breathe in a certain way, to understand what happens with water, to use certainness, to work with the Sabbaths, to begin to bring yourself into right relationships. Yeah.
And into alignment.
There are things that we offer, simple, that can precipitate a true awakening to the fact that we're living in a sacred world. Because everybody, I don't care what your religion is or what culture, we're all children.
We all live here.
We all live here.
So here's the secret magic, and then I will relinquish the airwaves. Stop talking for 2 minutes. Then I start again at 2:45. So this was the missing piece of the puzzle. And I call it nature's secret magic. And it was a biologist who's an expert, Janice Benius. She's got a TED Talk from like 2009 or something. It's really great. And she's like talking about how nature does everything that we need better than we do. She makes lenses, she makes adhesives, she makes, suspension bridges. And we need to learn from her. Great. Okay. She's talking about scientific, technological needs, to meet human needs. She gets to the end of her talk, like me. She's talking too much. She gets to the end of the talk, and they're like, I've got one more point. It's this one. And she's like, but I've run out of time. So, and they come on stage and they go, no, go ahead.
Yeah.
And she gets to the puzzle piece that I was missing, which was the thing that healed my soul and sent me back to all of you. Sorry. Nature's secret magic, she said. And this is the final thing that we have witnessed in our observations of nature. And it's nature's magic. It's a secret. We don't really understand how she does this. But everything, the way gases are made and soil is made fertile, and all of the systems that support life, that are not alive, and life itself, that bird, right? That bird, those plants, the insects in the soil, everything natural around us, in taking care of itself, eating, recreating, procreating, defecating. She calls it foreplay. The most fabulous foreplay. Engage in the most fabulous. While life is taking care of itself, and all of these systems are magically supporting life, what is happening is that each little part of life is making the world, the part of the world in which it lives, more conducive, science for all life. I cannot say this. I've said this now a lot, although not as much as I will be saying it, and I get goosebumps. In other words, the fundamental organizing principle of creation that we are blessed to, in this little envelope of life, the way it works is that all the systems support life, and then life itself makes
a better, a safer life system
for all life. That is the ethic for paganism. That is the ethic for witchcraft. That is the ethic for all human beings. That is the ethic for life. And that is proof of the divinity of creation. That's it, bingo.
That's beautiful.
Yep.
It is.
That's beautiful.
Think of it for one thing. In other words, and how do we change everything so that when we do something,
so that
the
we
net
too,
result,
everywhere we are just creating better, safer
creating
life
better.
systems
That's right.
for everything else.
And that's our job.
nature, there's no waste in nature. So that's one of our big problems that we create all this. Nature is reusing.
Efficient.
She reuses the waste to support life. Okay, that's our operating principle. Got it. I got it. That's how we do it. So I don't know how you do it, but I don't have to know how. You have to do your legal systems,
There are
your
billions of
economic
human
systems.
beings on this planet. Someone should know how.
The
That's right.
No, well, the psychologists will figure it out. The psychologists, the people who do waste. each area now has to address itself to this is the operating principle. How do we do it? We can do that. Why couldn't we do
Humans
it?
are very good at outsourcing
Oh, yeah.
expertise.
Absolutely.
We're part of nature. Everything we need to know, she's showing us. That's the biomimicry. It's all right in front of us. We have to take off the blindfold, become humble. This is what become humble and learn from her, and she'll show us. She'll show us how to make magic. She'll show us how to awaken magic. She'll show us how to live. She'll show us how to do what we used to do. We can do it.
That's right.
I know we can do this. Before I die? No.
Right.
Before you die?
Probably not.
But we're going to do it.
We're going to do it.
Little
That's
piece at
one
a
reason
time.
this is the fastest growing spirituality in the United States. And people may not realize it. That's why. And instead of it taking them 40 years to figure it out, we're going to speed it up.
As much as possible.
As much as we can.
Yep.
All right. Well, Phyllis, I think your assistant has
Has been
flashing
trying
us
to-
signs
trying
for
to-
like 10 minutes.
To cue us for a bit.
So, but we'd like to thank you for sharing this time with us, for sharing
My
your wisdom
joy.
with
My
us.
joy. It's fun to be back.
I'm looking forward to your class. I'm going to be attending that.
Me
So,
too.
and thank you
You
guys for
have to be
hanging
there.
out, for listening, and I hope you enjoyed what Phyllis had to share. And remember, you are part of this. So really listen to what she said and bring it into your heart, because as witches, as Wiccans, as pagans, this is our calling, is to restore the balance, to restore this understanding of relationship that we have with our Earth Mother.
Got to do the work.
Got to do the work.
To be
All
a
right.
witch is to be a wise one. To be
That's
a wise one is to be a seer of the sacred.
That's right. That's awesome.
That's what it is. And we can do it. It's as close as the next breath you take.
There you
That's
go.
right. There you
Go
go.
outside.
Go,
Breathe with the
Go
tree.
breathe.
Go play.
breathe
Go outside and
now.
play.
Go.
All right. Goodbye. Goodbye,
Bye.
friends.
We'll
We will
see
see
you
you
later.
again later.
Thank you so much.